you. It's nice to be here. And this is a great moment for Iranian struggle for freedom and human rights. My name is Saied Tagavi. I'm a project leader in this project. And I want to just give you a very abbreviated situation in Iran. Iran has been a member of the International Labour Organization, ILO, more than 50 years. ILO members have to accept and implement the ILO's principles, which are workers have the freedom to recognize their own free and independent union. Workers have the right to negotiate with their employers. Workers have the right to choose freely the union they will belong to. They should not be accused, persecuted, imprisoned because of union. In the ILO Congress, the Committee of Association reported and complained over the illegal repression and harassment of the Tehran bus drivers trade union. This committee have also complained over the lack of personal freedom of choice, the bad condition of life, and the lack of freedom to establish free and independent trade union. The Iranian law currently forbids and prevented the formation of free and independent trade unions. Islamic Labor Council, they call it labor houses, is the only official accepted labor organization in Iran, but they are not free and independent organization. This organization have been established by the Ministry of Labor. The head of this organization are mostly selected workers based on their loyalty and religious affiliation to the government. LO and Swedish Transport Workers Union have in many years tried to build up a cooperation among the labor unions both on national and international arena in order to gather support for the Iranian active unionists who are trying to organize the workers. Reza Shahabi, Behnam Ebrahimzadeh, Reza Zamini, and many other active unionists are still in prison only because they try to organize the labors. International reports indicating that the condition of the life in the Iranian prison, especially for the political and active unions, is getting worse day by day. The LO and the Swedish Transport Workers Union and Olof Palme Center believe that the trade union in many societies are playing an role in securing and implementing those fundamental principles of human rights. Against this background, we have invited Mr. Ahmed Shaheed and the UN Special Reporter on the condition of human rights in Iran and NGO Sudwind to Sweden in order to exchange their experiences and attract attention for our important struggle to save the life of our comrades in prison in Iran. We are glad Foreign Minister Mrs. Margot Wallström, she is going to meet Mr. Shaheed. And this is a very important moment for Iranian workers and Iranian people. Our required demands are, we have three demands. One, immediate freedom of all political and unions in Iran. In Iran. The Iranian regime must respect and implement the ILO's conventions. And our Iranian union's companions shall not be harassed, persecuted, jailed because of their just struggle. I hope that the Swedish public will give us all support that we needed. And now we are going, of course, we are going to meet the parliaments, parties in parliaments, and we are going to meet other officials, and we are trying to do as much as we can do. Thank you very much, and you are welcome, most welcome, and Mr. Shaheed and our comrades will come up. We have time to 1 o'clock, as you said. So we will be very short, maybe they can talk very shortly, and then you can put your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all. Let me begin by thanking LO TCO Secretariat for this lunch and for Saied Tagavi for inviting me to come over to Stockholm. I'm accompanied by Iranian human rights defenders, so I will want to leave them space and time to speak the authentic voices of Iran rights. But because I hold the UN portfolio on Iran, which I must say is an unpaid pro bono job, my day job is waiting for me in Colchester in Essex. But because I hold that mandate, I want to speak generally about the work I do, what's happening in Iran at the present time, and the impact this kind of activities can have on what's happening in Iran. As you well know, Iran just completed its Universal Periodic Review in Geneva, where every country in the world got to comment on Iran's human rights performance and make recommendations to the country. Iran's response was, okay, we will come back in 5 months' time with what we can accept out of those recommendations. It's not very encouraging because 4 years ago, the same thing was done. Iran accepted about 100 plus recommendations. In actual fact, not much was implemented. But nevertheless, it is always good to make those recommendations, to express concern what's going on, and to see if Iran will, mend its ways. President Rouhani has been in office now for about 15 months, and everybody is asked the question, what difference has he made to what's happening in the country? Now, I will leave all of the transport workers or the labor workers aspects to my colleagues from Sudwind, but I want to speak about these broader issues here. Now, there was the expectation that a person seen as a moderate, at least in rhetoric, would make an impact on human rights in the country. Last year, around this time, there was a warm expectation of that. But a year down the track, there's been a lot of disappointment. I am not accusing him of direct involvement in this, but certainly under his watch, things haven't improved, and some things have really become alarmingly bad. One of these is the executions in the country. The rate has surged over the past 15 months. The number I counted, 852 in the past 12 months, is a very high figure. It's the highest per capita globally, second highest in total numbers globally. So it's very, very alarming situation. And the fact that in this number are also now political detainees, or political prisoners, if you may add, and people convicted of economic crimes, as well as juveniles. 8 juveniles were executed last year. It's a very, very high figure for any country. And the fact that the capital crimes have now increased, have become broader, is again a cause of serious concern. So nothing has changed in this sense. In an actual sense, there appears to be regression in regard to this. President Rouhani was elected on a campaign pledge of primarily 2 things. One was engaging better with the world, therefore to wind down the sanctions. I'm happy that there is progress, at least visible, in this front. Sanctions don't help the people of Iran. I think the sooner they are off, the better they are for the people generally. In terms of the other pledges, human rights pledges, his main buzzword was non-discrimination. He pledged to end discrimination in Iran. That is a major, if you like, debility in the country, the levels of discrimination across a wide range of issues. So there was hope that he would do something about that, and he proposed a charter of rights to address this. Unfortunately, that charter doesn't add much to what is already there. It's just a collection of rules and therefore doesn't add value to what's going on. And in my observations, discrimination has worsened in some senses, and I'm sure Sholeh will speak to some aspects of this. And women, in actual fact, are the receiving end of some of these situation here. But in terms of how this affects workers' rights, Iran has a constitution which privileges Islam, the Shia community, and also gives status to the Sunni Muslims, and recognizes the Jewish community, the Zoroastrians, and the Christian community there, leaving out the Baha'i community and others of a different faith. And the Baha'i faith face very serious discrimination and persecution in all their activities, including in terms of their right to work. A number of Baha'i businesses have been closed down in the past few years, some 500 in the past five years. That's a very, very high figure. And of course, not everything is reported, and it's only what I can find. In addition to that, in terms of employment, if it's for public services, there is something called the Gozinosh criterion, a screening criterion, which will screen an applicant for other things, loyalty to the system. Now, essentially, this would mean loyalty to the Vilayati Faqih, the guardianship of the jury system they have, essentially a Shia person, perhaps. In other words, it puts filters on access to services and to employment as well, which is, again, a very, very serious concern. President Rouhani, I have not seen any proposals to revise or change these. In actual fact, bills in Parliament show that there is serious a case for concern here. Women's participation in the workforce is very low, 16%. It's very, very low. Notwithstanding the fact that the universities more than men, 62% just a few years ago. But under a quota system, years ago, number has come down to something like 48%. So you can see the immediate impact in 2-year time frame of a policy to keep women outside universities. Along with that, of course, is a pending bill, which I will speak to in detail. It's called the Family Resilience Bill, ostensibly designed to strengthen families or other social engineering purposes, but it will essentially leave women out in terms of access to jobs. Already, given this low participation ratio, it's going to make it even worse. Laws in Iran allow a husband to prohibit a wife from working. I raise issue with this. I'm told a similar law exists for men, but the thing is, if you go to a court where society believes that women ought to be staying home, then the argument that children suffer, the mother is out, is what the judge will hear. So in actual practice, it's women who stay home and not the men. So this is again a matter of concern. What the new bill does is essentially grade for the employers who they can hire first, leaving women out in the cold. In terms of the impact of the economic situation, there are 27 labor activists in prison at the present time. All of them have been agitating for legitimate rights, payment of wages on time, because there were severe delays in this, or asking for better wages because there's been high inflation over the past so many years. 35% is inflation rate at the present time. They were offered 25%. A 10% cut effectively in real income. So obviously, that's a legitimate ground to ask for. Iranians will tell you they have laws for everything, which is true. But then it's the last phrase which takes it away. For example, you have the right to speak, as we would hear, providing, of course, it conforms to Islamic standards or doesn't offend this or that. The press law, in fact, says in 9 prohibited articles, one of them, the press cannot offend the supreme leader. Now, you can imagine what that does to free expression. This is just an indicator of what is there. What Iran does is set out the rights as it's required to do, because it's signed on to the 2 covenants, ICCPR and ICSCR, but then add a rider saying subject to this and that, Islamic criteria, Islamic system, or whatever. So even the right to form unions is based upon the unions conforming to these criteria, standards which they may see as undermining the system of the state. So if you were to go on a strike, they would say undermining the system. So the 27 people in detention are charged not with offences that may come from the labor law, not that there should be any, but with national security crimes. So when President Rouhani says we don't have a media person in prison, what he's saying is nobody's charged with the media offence. They're charged with national security crimes. This is the other issue, the fact that they use first, overly broad limitations to nullify rights. Second, use national security charges to charge people they think have views opposite to what the government holds. Now, I have exceeded the time allocated and stuff right here, and let my colleagues from Sudwind address you. Thank you very much.
I first wanted to thank you, Saied, thank you everybody here for organizing this very good days and very nice lunch that I have never experienced before, so it seems me very productive. I just begin so that I don't overgo the time. Dr. Shaheed expressed lots of things on this issue. I will just go on very small things that are missing from his talks about the Family Resilience Bill, on employment. The first rate goes to men with children. They are the people who are going to be employed in public or private sectors, no difference. The bill is still not ratified, so we hope that international pressure as well as the civil societies inside Iran work on this issue as well could stop this bill from ratifying. So that means that by employment, men with children are at the first rank, then comes married men without children, and then come women with children, and then afterwards single women. So that means that single women, despite whatever expertise they have, are not employed as long as a man is applying for that special job. What I wanted to add was on the CEDAW. Iran is one of the 6 countries which has not ratified or signed CEDAW. So all kind of discrimination that happens in Iran, and there are not 1 or 2, I will tell you, are done both in law and in practice. And Iran has made a kind of law system like the Citizen Charter. The name is the Law of Women's Rights and Responsibilities. And you can find it very probably in the internet to read it more. And Iran tries to show that this law is a kind of Islamic CEDAW for our culture. So this is a very, very dangerous actually trap that I hope the international community don't get inside this trap. Due to the Vienna Declaration, we know that on the human rights, there is no cultural human rights or cultural women rights or something like that. Human rights are global. So this is what we should talk about very, very definitely. Women rights everywhere in the world is the same rights.
There is another important convention about the right of migrants in Iran. We have a lot of discrimination of workers in Iran, and we have a lot of Afghan workers in Iran who are discriminated. This convention is very important for us as well. 4 conventions are important for working class and for worker rights defender and human rights defender as well. And we have a lot of economic, social, and cultural rights. After the sanctions, economic sanctions, blind economic sanctions, the economic situation in Iran is worse. And the right to education, the right to health, and a lot of such rights are not achieved enough just now. And we work on these rights as well. I will not Saied, Dr. Shaheed, and my wife has spoken about the several aspects of this issue. I don't want to speak more, and I hope and I suppose that you have a lot of questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, welcome up on stage, dear guests. And
important by releasing all detainees from prison, by not harassing civil society activists. That is, I think, the most important thing, to compel Iran to give the space to people of Iran to express themselves. And to do this, it's very important to hold Iran, light to Iran in front of its own people. Iran gets most uncomfortable when it is shown to its own people that it's breaking its own laws. So I think these two things would be very, very important: to follow what he said, respect laws as a stand, release detainees, and don't harass activists, and to put that spotlight to the Iran people to show to them where the government is failing in their own obligations.
And Sholeh Zamini, what do you say? What are the opportunities? You are describing a very difficult situation for our sisters in Iran.
Actually, I would say that the civil society in Iran is very powerful. Women are powerful inside the country, but there are sometimes some parts that could be, on some issues, the international solidarity can help a lot. For example, on this new law, it was told this bill was not ratified as well, but it was very much spoken about, that if you talk against the population growth and if you speak in favor of family planning, this would be criminalized. So you see, in such cases, the international community could help a lot to be the voice of the Iranian civil societies. And there are lots of issues that you could be informed and you could push pressure on the Iran's state. As they come to the international community, they come to Human Rights Council and they talk about this. For example, on child early marriage, Mr. Larijani came to the UPR session and said that my children, I would be happy if my daughters marry with 20. Yes, of course, he belongs to the 2% higher income of the Iran. I mean, what has it to do with the normal people and the poor that give their children to marriage in very early ages? So that would be very important, that you be the voice of Iranian civil society in some cases that we are not able to have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything? You're describing the amount of important conventions, and you mentioned CEDAW as well, that has not been ratified. Is it realistic to demand this in this situation?
Yeah, it's realistic to demand it, and we challenge also for these reforms. But the people of Iran recognize themselves, some of them as reformists, some of them as revolutionalists, and some of them refusionists, something between both of them. But we, human rights activists, human rights defenders, work step by step for any change and for any success. But we recognize ourselves not as reformists or the two other possible things.
Also, Mr. Tagavi, I would like to ask you, what is the situation for Reza Shahabi? It has been highlighted from the side of LO in particular, and Transport, on the difficult situation for this man who needed urgent rehabilitation after his surgery.
Thank you very much. Well, we have some contact with our comrades in Iran, Reza. Fortunately, he is still outside the prison, and he is trying to be quiet because he needs to be recovered after the surgery. But the situation for other friends of us in the jails is very bad. The condition is very worse and worse for every day, because what they did, they separate those the group of political and unionist activists in jail. They send them to different part of Iran, and they put it in the section that they are the murderer, they are the drug dealers, and these people, and they put it there. And then they start to strike, and they did it. But I want to say one more thing. It's very important. Two. It's just one is that there is Iran is trying to internationally try to discourage the United Nations to end the Mr. Shahab's mandate. There is a lot of work in this one, and so they don't want him to be to continue his job. Our aim is, I think the Swedish government also are going to try to challenge them, and we want it to go. And the other one is that there is what you call it, statement in which is being passed through in Geneva by 78 yes, and 69 no, and 66 35 no, and 69 abstain. And this shows that there is a lot of things going on. So that one is very important, that we will meet the parliament's parties, and we want to ask them to support us in this one. Then the last one is that there is not only unionists sitting there. There are a lot of journalists. 26 journalists are sitting in the jails, and over 500 been treated, and they left the countries, and over 60% are under persecutions they are going to. So we want that the journalists union and Metal and other things to join us in these very important things, that because it's very, without the journalists, without the media in Iran, then we have very little to do. We need the opinion. And we have also teachers. The head of the teachers union, which is the most organized one, is sitting in, they are in jail. As you said, what is going on. We demand that they're released, because we need these people be outside in order to get it. We have the lawyers, Nasrin Sotoudeh. She was jailed for helping those accused for the national security, against the national security. She went to jail 3 years. After when she was released, they said that in 2 years you are not supposed to work as a lawyer. So she's taking care of them. At the end, what we'll say, without the women's struggle in Iran, the Iranian revolution would not be succeeded. Thank you.
So let's open up for questions from the audience. When you ask a question, may I also ask you to introduce yourself and if you represent an organization. Do we have a second microphone? No. So maybe you can come forward and speak in the microphone.
Okay, I'm Ernst Hollander, and I'm sitting here with my friends from Jews for Israeli-Palestinian Peace. And I'm asking you about the great success of Rouhani in international public relations, because either you have to interpret it like this, because, I mean, 5 years ago there was very much in the papers after this big thing on the square. But one impression from just following Western media is that it is a loss of progress in Iran. But on the other hand, what you are telling us is quite the opposite. And so progress can, of course, be measured in different ways. Is there progress in the sense that for them, they are successful internally in sort of lessening the pressure from normal people? I mean, are they becoming more legitimate in the way that they have acted after Rouhani came to power? And the other is, of course, is it just a scam, or in what sense is there some progress?
Thank you very much for the question. I think my short answer is Iran's become cleverer. They have become cleverer in dealing with things, not better in any sense of the word. What you do find, I think, in the international media initially was the Rouhani charm offensive, releasing some people before he goes to GA to meet everybody, the toning down of the rhetoric that his predecessor used to indulge in, that is gone, and a lot of promises about doing the right thing. So that is a new discourse from what was there previously, and a confusing one, because what he says isn't what happens in the country. He might speak about academic freedom, but then you have people, even now facing for insulting the prophet, a death sentence. You might have him speaking about women's rights being equal, but then people in parliament are passing different legislation. The best argument in his favor is that he is powerless, in the country are undermining him. That's what some Iranians outside the country who want to see something positive explain it. I say that in a desert, if you drop one drop of water, it looks like an oasis. So that is what's happening here. But in actual effect, on the nuclear front, yes, I think I'm not part of that, but all I see in the papers is that the potential for a deal is there, that although there are still differences, they hope to narrow this by March next year and see the deal by July next year. But that's a different element altogether. When it comes to the people of Iran, apart from little economic improvement in the country, nothing has really happened to celebrate or to say there's joy in anything. If anything, we've seen in the past a trend, a continuing trend past 3 years of systematically dismantling the ability of the Iranian people to mount the kind of organized opposition that we saw 5 years ago. If that is a short answer to your question.
Thank you. More questions? Yes.
Well, my name is Göran Gustafsson. I'm from the Municipal Workers Sweden. And our last Congress last year, we made a statement calling for the release of our comrades in the jails of Iran. And that's why we have a duty to follow it up. And you talk about Behnam Ebrahimzadeh. I think today it's the International Day against violence against women around the world. And he dropped a message from inside the jail. I could read it yesterday. Well, he pointed out what you said, that this is a terrible, horrific crimes going on against women, these acid attacks. And he compared it to ISIS and their atrocities. And he pointed out as well that the authorities is very keen on prosecuted.
Sohail Arabi is very much in danger, and we are very much concerned about him. This is not the first person. The first person is already executed. That was some when we were in Geneva, actually. So this is the second person. This is the new criminal law in Iran, which allows people to be sentenced to death if they speak against prophets. So this is a law code. So this was not the case in the last, I suppose, penal code. This is new. This is also one step that I think the international community could be very active on that issue, because we have seen before also that in case that, for example, on case of Nasrin Sotoudeh or other people, in case that there are pressure from international community, Iran reacts. They still care about their
How is that linked to Iran's policy of supporting Sunni radicalism, which has been reported, although I don't know if you can verify it, in terms of on the one hand supporting Salafi movements and other radical expressions, and on the other hand cracking down on them. So that's my first question. My second is about the recent preservation of good and prohibition of vice bill, Nahiyat Munkar, which has been underlined as a context in which we must understand the acid attacks. What do you think the impact of that bill will be more broadly on human rights, but also on labor relation in terms of employers using it? And how can we demand accountability when we have a bill that basically encourages private individuals to commit human rights crimes? Thanks.
Thank you. On the first question, I'm on thin ice because I have a UN hat and a UN code of conduct, which limits me to certain things. But in terms of the Sunni community and Iran's involvement in that, I think the facts are quite widely known as to what the issues are. But my focus is human rights. Therefore, I've been looking at how Iran has increasingly alleged communities, Arab communities within the country are involved in what they call Wahhabism or radicalism, and therefore arresting or otherwise targeting people they claim are involved in a more radical version of Islam. Now, I don't want to contest their frame, but I want to question the methods of doing this. So I go on this on a rule of law perspective, that the charges must be clearly articulated. It must be specified in law. They must be given due process rights, and you can't have torture used as a means to get confession that they're used in courts. So I go down that route, but I am concerned that there's a wider impact of this, and I would hesitate to comment on Iran's history, as it were, in this regard. I think all of us know what that history is. What was the second question? Preservation of good and
yes. Prohibition of vice.
Yes, it's the Hizbah doctrine under Islamic law and Islamic Sharia, and you do find reference that in the Iranian constitution as well. But that is seen in a more global context. But over the past couple of years, we have seen public pronouncements from the very top, all the way, speaking about an Islamization, the need to Islamize the society again, as a response to what happened 5 years ago. So you see in Friday sermons, you see in Supreme Leader speeches, the call to re-Islamize society. And you do see in the way curricula in universities have been purged or revised, the way certain professors were dismissed and so on. So that trend is there. And then you have the quota on women's access to education, single gendering certain university programs, and then the bill on family resilience, which will put sort of women out of the job market, essentially. And then you have a bill in parliament which actually try to protect those individuals who carry out these attacks. So my point here is basic rule of law issues. When you encourage private citizens to carry law into their own hands, you actually undermine the rule of law. So it is a violation of Iran's core obligations under the ICC PR. So one has to start from there. And of course, President Rouhani had spoken out against this bill. But I think as a president, one has an obligation to do just more than make a statement. You actually have to actively lobby, if you have a point of view, actively lobby for that, especially when it affects something as fundamental as rule of law. I have very serious concerns that this provision could create a lot of rights violations in the country.
I'll just short, because we are out of time, as it seems. I just say that was really the rule of law is violated gravely. And then this law was ratified with aiming on women, actually, and not on aiming to the corruption or lying of many authorities that come in TV and just say whatever they want to say, being it correct or not. I mean, this was precisely aiming women and youth, I will say, in the streets. So that the aim was not that people go and find out what are the failures of the system and just bring it to light as a part of this law. So.
Thank you. So final words, what would you like the audience to bring home with you today after this lunch seminar? Saied.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you very much that so many people from different parts of Sweden and Stockholm is coming here and listen to this very interesting description of the situation in Iran. I will tell you that tomorrow at 6 o'clock we have a so-called the panel debate in ABF. And the moderator of this panel debate will be Güteland. She is coming from European Unions here in order to take part in that panel debate. And we have Olof Palme's Center head of program, Jens Urbach, with him. And our friends will be there, and I will tell you that you should come there and you shouldn't miss that meeting, and because it's very, very important. We have to intensify our effort in order to support those the struggle in Iran for freedom, for democracy, and against the so-called repression under the name of their religions.
Thank you, and a big hand for you for coming here, and to our special guests. And to the struggle continues, and to quote the Persian poet, it is only through the heart you can reach the sky, and we will do that together. Thank you, the special rapporteur to you on human rights for the Islamic Republic in Iran, Ahmed Shaheed, for coming here, sharing with us. Thank you, Sholeh Zamini from Sudwind, Hassan Nayeb-Hashem from Sudwind, and Saied Tagavi from Transport. It's been a pleasure to having you here today. Thank you.
Tack ska du ha.